Welcome to today's program of Rotary Reads. My name is Dave Bennett. I'm a member of the Rotary Club of Neepawa here in Manitoba, part of District 5550. Rotary International is a worldwide organization with 1.2 million members worldwide, about 40,000 different clubs in 129 different countries. Each month, a magazine has been produced, and this has been happening for over 100 years, and sent to all members. And the purpose of this show is to engage the viewer. Hope that you would enjoy hearing about some of the articles that are in our magazine. It's published in 25 different languages as well. So today I have with me Murray Newton, a member of our club, to help with it. Welcome, Murray.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Murray's the treasurer of our club. Well, he's been president at least once, I know of.
Twice.
Twice, he says. He's been with us quite a while. So, Murray, tell us, how did you get started in Rotary in the first place? I'm sure the viewers would like to know.
Well, it was actually quite by accident. I was helping a friend move a piano in town. They were moving from one house to another, and one of the fellows that was helping move that piano, a fellow that just passed away not very long ago, Herb Osmond, said, "Murray, would you ever be interested in Rotary?" And it was a time in my life where my kids were growing up. They were still at home and whatnot, but I wanted to do something for my community, and I said, well, I might be interested, and sort of that's where it went from there. And that happened to be 25 years ago this month, I believe.
Oh, wow. Hey, well, we'll have to have, I guess, if we didn't have COVID right now, we'd all be knocking on your door for a big celebration.
Yeah, it would have been welcome.
I'm sure it would have been. Anyway, Rotary Reads, to share some stories from our magazine. Which magazine are you reading from? And maybe the articles that you're...
I am reading from the April Rotary magazine, and the article that kind of struck a chord with me, it's called Big Task, Small Ask. And it says the bite-sized secret to accomplishing something that daunting project that you've been putting off. And that kind of hit home to me. And so I read the article and I thought, well, it is quite interesting. I've always prided myself in being somebody that could get at it and get it done, but I've noticed over the last couple of years that something that isn't quite so tasteful to me, I have been able to procrastinate, and this has some things in it for me.
So Nancy Shepherdson, who wrote the article, provided some good advice.
She did indeed, and Nancy is a Rotarian from the United States, in Illinois, I believe, is where she's from, but she provides some good things that I think a lot of people can take into their day-to-day lives.
Good. Let's hear what she has to say.
Okay, and Nancy starts off, I conducted a thought experiment about my Facebook friends recently when I asked, is one thing you really want to get done but can't ever seem to get around to? In a matter of minutes, I had almost 50 responses. People spoke of decluttering rooms, organizing photos, making a financial plan, changing careers, writing a book. All these projects have one thing in common. They are too complex or time-consuming to accomplish in one fell swoop, and it makes it easy to put them off until some other day. When the pandemic left many people with more time at home, a lot of us assumed we would finally tackle these big projects. All but the most disciplined among us, however, found ways to avoid starting on them. One friend described to me how even though she had a home office, she had set up her computer at her dining room table because organizing the chaos on her desk was more than she could handle. I can relate to that.
Laugh out loud on that one.
In her 2020 book, Joy at Work, organizing guru Marie Kondo writes that people need to be conscious of this tendency to put things off. There's a reason why we usually prioritize urgent tasks over important ones. Important ones tend to be more difficult to complete than urgent ones, making us more reluctant to start them. Wise woman, Kondo. A year ago, I found myself in that situation. For years, I had been putting off cleaning the clutter, especially my late mother's things, out of my house. I also wanted to write a family history, work on my finances with an eye towards retirement, and finally clear the buckthorn out of my yard. Like everyone, I was suddenly spending a lot less time, none actually, traveling to meetings, going to parties, and doing other fun things. I could feel the found time rising up around me like a tsunami of opportunity. And like many people, I was raring to go, but instead found myself watching TV instead. I could escape into binge watching, but I couldn't escape the fact that I was making no progress on my long deferred projects. Then, 6 weeks into the lockdown, I read an article about how to overcome procrastination that contained the advice to almost complete a task if doing so would take 2 minutes or less. That sounded doable. As it turns out, you can't get big projects done 2 minutes at a time. But the article did give me an insight. I was focusing so much on how big my jobs were, that it was easy to talk myself out of doing anything at all. What if I just got started? A couple more days of not starting ensued. Finally, I decided that even I could stick with a job, even a big one, for a few minutes. So I decided to tackle the task that was bothering me the most. Every time I went outside for a walk, I was confronted with it, the buckthorn that was slowly choking my flower beds. In northern Illinois, buckthorn is an invasive shrub that spreads easily, mainly by acting as a laxative to birds. Like some horror movie, ectoplasm, if ignored, it can quickly take over. Contemplating the spreading greenery one hot summer day while enjoying a cool beverage on my deck, I started imagining how much I could accomplish in a couple of hours. So I got my loppers, my gloves, and my weed killer and began hacking away. After 30 minutes, dripping with sweat and exhausted, I quit, retreating inside for a blast of air conditioning. As I stood at the window with a popsicle looking at the little area that was now cleared of buckthorn, I was shocked by the intensity of my delight. Wow, I thought, look what I did in just half an hour. The next day I couldn't wait to get out there for another 30 minutes of soul-satisfying progress. How easy it now seemed to do something that would produce tangible results with such a minimal investment of time. I began telling my husband, who was also working from home, that I had to go out and do my 30 minutes. Every day I spent a half hour removing buckthorn, and because I wasn't overtaxing myself, I almost...
Well, a little bit of success can help you get going again, right?
It just makes you feel better about the whole thing, and if it's not so overwhelming, that's what I've taken out of this.
Right.
And she says, I always look forward to the next day's 30 minutes. Many times it was surprisingly difficult to stop when a half hour was up. I would get into the flow and felt like I could lop for hours. Just one more little patch, I would tell myself. Science has a name for that desire to keep going with something that once got started. Once you get started, and I think I've got this right. The Zeigarnik effect is called for Russian psychologist Bluma Zeigarnik, who noticed that waiters tend to remember incomplete orders better than complete one. In experiments, she discovered that the desire for closure in humans is strong and universal. Non-completion creates a desire for completion that will nag at us until we get it done.
So you should, in the restaurant, you should not give your complete order. If this logic is yours.
I'll have to try that the next time I go in and see if I get better service.
And see if you get a test of that. Zeigarnik, Russian psychologist. Wow, okay.
So it was an interesting point. And
Yes.
if you've already give up on New Year's resolution, the same impulse may explain why. When making resolutions, we tell ourselves we are going to work on something until we've accomplished it. And at first, it feels great to do that. But when it takes longer to accomplish that big goal than we think it should, and most things do, our failure to reach closure starts eating at us. Our subconscious mind, suffering from severe zygomatic effect, pushes us towards the relief of quitting and being done with it once and for all. Let's watch TV instead. To overcome that temptation to work too long or to quit too soon, Berlin-based Francesco Cirella developed a time management method that uses a kitchen timer set in 25-minute increments. He calls it the Pomodoro technique, named after his tomato-shaped timer. There are also apps that help you do this. I'm sure everybody's got one on their phone. I like one called Timely, which is a stopwatch that can be set for exactly 30 minutes. To be maximally productive during your concentrated period of work, Cirillo recommends keeping interruptions at bay. If the thought of an unrelated task or activity comes to you as you're working, he says, just make a note of it and put it aside. Does that mean I can tell my wife that she can't interrupt me?
You can tell her.
If the thought of an unrelated task or activity comes as you're working, he says that you just make a note of it and put it aside. He also recommends that every morning you write down all the urgent and non-urgent projects on your plate. But that's too much pressure for me. To decide how to spend your 30 minutes each day, I say pick the project that's nagging at you most and launch into it. You know which one it is. I've discovered through trial and error that I do need to repeat several simple steps every day. I gather any equipment I will need. I promise myself a reward. I tell everyone who might need something from me that I will not be available for anything but dire emergencies for 30 minutes. I set my stopwatch, then I dive in, and I don't allow any interruptions. When the timer goes off, I stop immediately. Even if I'm in the middle of something, I step back and admire my progress because I have made some. I savor my reward. Then I make an appointment with myself for the next day and look forward to getting started again.
Yeah, I think that 30-minute stop kind of, and left it unfinished at some point, that kind of keeps you going the next day because you want to get that little piece completed, right?
Well, I can see it overwhelming you if once you got started, and some people just keep going,
I know.
and then the next day you wake up and you're stiff and whatnot, I'll put it off for today. So whether it be 30 minutes or 15 minutes or 25 minutes, whatever fits your schedule and your physical needs, and to some extent the job I think that you're doing.
It's really helpful if that job is something you can leave there, like clearing out the buckthorn. I mean, you don't have to worry about taking it off the kitchen table so that you can have supper.
That's true.
But if you're sorting out mother's pictures or whatever, you either need a place or
that they can leave them so you're not starting from scratch.
To get at it.
Very much so.
Yeah, it depends on the job, right?
Yeah, for sure. Some people don't have trouble with procrastination. They say, just do it. Those of us in that do it some other day camp should understand that our subconscious minds are trying to protect us from fear. Fear of boredom, fear of never being done, fear that won't be good enough, fear of falling down a black hole of grief if you confront that pile of your mom's stuff. Recently, I made dealing with my mom's things my latest 30-minute project. I had studiously avoided doing this since she passed away nearly 4 years ago. Ever since I cleaned out her apartment, keeping things I couldn't bear to give away, the boxes had been sitting in a corner of my guest bedroom under a blanket. That blanket can't hide the psychic discomfort, but I found that approaching my task as a 30-minute project took away a lot of the dread. How bad could it be if I could quit in 30 minutes? To ease my way in, I started with the paperwork, sending tax returns and financial paperwork through the shredder 30 minutes at a time. The jewelry and knickknacks are slowly resolving themselves into keep, donate, and toss categories. Soon I'll turn to the photos and souvenirs she treasured, and as I go, I find myself looking forward to spending a nostalgic half hour a day with my mom.
Well, that's kind of neat. Looking forward to it, of course, is very important, isn't it?
It is, and it just makes the project that much more doable. And I've got a project at home of a box of pictures that falls into that category.
I was going to ask you what I've noted a couple of things. I had to think about it as to what I might have done. So will you go ahead? You got some pictures you want? These are printed pictures, right?
These are pictures that we've had in our lifetime, and in most cases they don't mean much to our kids and whatnot, and there's lots that could be thrown out. And the few that we do need to keep, we either need to scan and save or put into a book or whatever, but those boxes have been sitting in my rec room for 3 years. And you know what? My desk is also a mess. I just clear a spot to do the Rotary books each week, and so that might have to be a 30-minute project too, for a number of days.
Well, the picture one's a problem if you can't spread it out. Myra, my wife, got into her pictures of our grandchildren. This is about a year ago when the COVID was first starting and we were locked down. And she had a deadline because we had 2 grandchildren graduate from high school in June, and she wanted to have a book to give them. So she was able to do that for those 2 grandchildren that were graduating. However, there's one grandchild that graduated 2 years before that. He doesn't have his book yet. And I guess my picture project, if you want to call it my phone got so full of pictures. Not that I take a lot, they just seem to keep coming from, I belonged to we went on a trip to Scotland with a group, and they were using WhatsApp, and they were sharing pictures. And because I was on the group, I kept getting all these pictures, and the phone filled up. So I did buy an external hard drive, and I've reduced my phone to very few pictures. So that was a one-day project, because once you got at it, I don't think you could leave it for 30 minutes and
well,
go
that
back.
one kind of hits home because I went on Friendship Exchange. It will be 2 years ago right now, or we just got back 2 years ago from now. Those pictures, all several hundred of them, are still on my phone. So maybe that's another project I could undertake.
I'm sure your woodworking projects don't take as long, Murray, because
you know what? I never seem to have trouble getting at them though, so I don't need to use the 30-minute rule.
Well, you've got a big workspace, and you can leave it out there for the next time you come back to it.
My wife might like to institute the 30-minute rule for my workshop.
For doing that, that's true. That's true. Yeah. I guess the other one for me, this Rotary Reads program, it's been on my mind for a year or more that it might be something interesting to do, and I finally did get at it. And it's maybe not be in 30-minute batches, but you know, as I contact different members in the club to help with it and so on, and it's been very enjoyable to doing that. So on. So.
Well, I think so many projects, once we get started at, we find it's not quite as bad as what we had thought, and it's getting started and being able to get at it.
And the 30-minute rule, or make it 45 as you said, or 15, or whatever works for you in the project, but cutting it into doable sections will help you get at it. And I'm sure that, you know, we should ask viewers to phone up the station and say, what did you do, or send an email to us.
Yes,
You know, that would be a great idea.
It would.
Anyway, I had looked through the January magazine, January 2021, and there was an article here that I wanted to talk about. I mentioned it in the previous taping with Kate Atkinson about an e-club, and explained what e-clubs are. E-clubs are electronic clubs. The people that belong to an e-club don't even necessarily live in the same city or the same country even. So and they often have a focus or a purpose for the club, and it's not, their focus is not so wide spread in terms of service to the community and world and so on. Anyway, this article is from the January issue. I'm looking for here's the author. Vanessa Glavinskas is the author of it. Anyway, she writes, it's called Water, Water Everywhere. When Neil Van Dyne moved to Haiti with plans to start a school, he thought he would stay about 18 months. That was 31 years ago. In that time, he's not only started that school, but also has gotten involved in reforestation work, taught farmers about erosion control, started a seed bank, distributed solar ovens, and provided wells to communities in need of water. He now runs a non-profit, which is called Haiti Outreach, that is working with Rotary on an ambitious program called Hand Wash to provide clean water to every household in Haiti. Van Dyne's dedication to humanitarian service made him an ideal candidate for Rotary, and we would certainly all be glad to have him in our club.
No kidding.
Yeah. But time commitment of membership got in the way. My work takes me all over the country, so I couldn't make a meeting each week, he explains. But he had always networked with Rotarians, and it was at a Rotary International convention in Atlanta in 2017 that he went to, as a non-Rotarian, I guess, when he attended the World Water Summit, which was organized by the WASH Rotary Action Group. WASH stands for Water, Sanitation, and Hygiene. And that was their action group. And if we have time, I'll even talk about action groups possibly today. But anyway, and he heard at that summit meeting that the action group's chairperson, Ron Denham, mentioned the WASH E-Club. Van Dyne decided to join on the spot. Our members, meaning members of that club, span from New Zealand to Mexico, United States, Canada, Europe, and Africa, says Heidi Rickles, the club president. As co-founder of Freshwater Project International, an NGO that carries out water projects in Malawi, Rickles, that's the president, also worked with Rotarians, but she wasn't able to commit to a club until becoming a charter member of the E-Club in 2016. That's when they started, I guess. Quote, I was too busy and it was too expensive to commit with a young family, she explains. The club's a great fit for young professionals like her, she says, because with no meal, the dues are less expensive, and since members can log on from anywhere in the world, the time commitment is manageable. The club's membership is a highly skilled group of water and sanitation professionals. I may be the only member without a PhD, says Jeff Elliott. I'm sure they would take, if people were involved and had an interest in WASH, they would take them as a member, even if they had very little to contribute to start with. If people wanted to join it and find out more about it and see how it could help their community or whatever, I'm sure you could find E-WASH, E-Club WASH on the internet pretty easily. Jeff Elliott, an environmental scientist based in Colorado, who's helping spearhead the club's ambitious effort to build a series of apps to map water and sanitation projects around the world in order to create a database of community needs. So here's Rotary, or Rotarian, and a club, you know, looking well out into the world to see where needs are for projects, and he's prepared to create this database and an app and so on. So all Rotary clubs, and anybody else for that matter, can tap into it and complete or proceed with our work of trying to make the world a better place. Yeah. Right. With better, more consistent community assessments, he says, we can improve the outcomes of global grants. Global grants are always mentioned in these Rotary articles. In order to get something done, you need money, and global grants are there to help. And that's money that you can access through the foundation, which we encourage everybody in the world to contribute to the Rotary Foundation.
But that's a very interesting concept of being able to do that, because I think most Rotary clubs struggle with a international project that they can become involved with. Right. And there's a database of where you can see where these projects might be and what might interest your club.
Yeah, and not only if they're there, they've been sort of checked out in a sense, yes. And you have a Rotary club that is putting it up, so you can trust that the information, is valid, yes. and the need is there and so on. So yeah, that's right. In a community Rotary club, which is more like our Neepawa club, right? In a community Rotary club, your common thread is what's going on in that town, says Van Dyne. The common thread for us is WASH, water, sanitation, hygiene, and our combined knowledge and worldwide reach. He appreciates having a group of friends with whom he can discuss even the smallest details, he says, noting that he once had a 15-minute conversation with a fellow member about valves. I'm not sure that would be a good topic for presentation at a Rotary club.
It might not, but somebody like me might find it very interesting.
That's right. Well, you might want to check this out, Murray. So they've got a few statistics here. They chartered in 2016. They have membership, 29 members.
Wow.
We mentioned what WASH meant, And in many parts of the world, the basic need for clean water and sanitation systems is unmet. Even in Canada,
Yes.
we can refer to places where that is so. And they have some stats here. It says that 1.4 billion people, that's, I'm guessing, what, 20% of the world's population?
I'm not sure. off the top
Somewhere
of
in
my head.
that area, I would think, lack an improved sanitation facility.
Wow.
Wow, yeah. 579 million, that's over 500 million, people do not have access to improved drinking water in our world. More than 1,000 children under the age of 5 die each day from diarrheal diseases that are preventable with improved water, sanitation, and hygiene.
Yeah, and that brings a Rotary Club so close to being able to help so many people so quickly through a program like that,
Yeah.
that you're able to contribute something so meaningful.
So
And I
meaningful
think
and
it's
so-
neat. That's a neat idea.
Yeah, it really is. Pretty much everyone in the club has their own project, and they're working on that in different parts of the world. But the knowledge that we share and the speakers we engage benefit all of us, he says. Our combined network is huge. Of course, they have to meet at 2 different time zones, or at many. They alternate on each week. They meet at a different time, and then the third week, the same as the first week. Right? For those on the east coast of the United States, the meetings are Tuesdays at noon and Thursdays at 8 p.m. That's what the times turn out to be for them.
Right.
So the other people would be, I don't know, midnight and 8 in the morning maybe, or whatever they are, I don't know. So it's happy hour for me, one guy says, and morning coffee for somebody else, which is really kind of the neat part of it, yeah. He said, however, says the lack of face-to-face interaction is one of the few disadvantages of the club, but members routinely gather to chat on Zoom before their meeting starts. In September, they had a virtual trivia night fundraiser with topics that included Rotary and, of course, water, and raised money for wash projects. Club members also connect with Rotary clubs in their own area, volunteering on local projects and fundraising and so on. He says, I love the club because it's networking, it's supporting each other, and it's sharing knowledge. The group motivates.
Well, it is, and being able to connect with like-minded individuals, that's something you have common. Like, I mean, it would be no different than me finding it something really exciting to talk to a wood turner in Timbuktu, because that's something that interests me, and if you've got that common thread, it's pretty easy to get a friendship struck up, and good things happen out of that.
Well, you went on you said a friendship exchange. There are fellowships we've talked about in Rotary before, and I don't know, 90, 100 different fellowships, and I'll bet one of them is woodworking.
Actually, I think you're right.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure it would be. This is where Rotarians with a common interest, often recreational, and they form not a club. It's not a club. It's a fellowship, and they do a few things during the year, and can talk to them. And I'll bet a lot of those fellowships have gained members over this year when people are at home, and a lot of us have learned how to use Zoom and that sort of thing too. So.
It has opened up a lot of doors for us, being able to use the Zoom and the electronic communications, certainly for somebody my age where maybe we weren't that conversant in it now, and now it's kind of second nature. So it does open a lot of doors.
That's right. And that's a neat segue, into the little article that you have there about Rotary Youth Exchange, and you've had a lot of experience in that. So tell us a bit about that and read the artitle.
Well, it did, and it sort of follows along the same line of what you're talking about, e-clubs. And I and our family were involved with Rotary Exchange. We hosted 10 long-term exchange students for 3 or 4 months each year for 10 consecutive years at our home. And so when I joined Rotary, international doings were not in my train of thought at all.
Right, yep.
I wanted to do something for my local community, and as it turned out, Rotary Exchanges had more to do with our family than I had ever imagined, and some of those students we're still in touch with today, and some of them are 15 years ago that they were actually No, some of them are 25 years ago that were at our home.
In fact, you've made making contacts. Our next meeting, which will already be over by the time people see this, is we're going to have some former exchange students talk to us.
It is, and it just makes the world a much smaller place. But having said that, Rotary Exchange is on a hiatus for the last year because nobody can travel.
Right.
And our club has not participated in Rotary Exchange for 2 or 3 years through some other issues with obtaining host families and some things like that. And our club is largely a member of older people that maybe don't have the contacts in the community. But anyway, when I saw this article, it's called Safe Travels. An Indian district keeps Rotary Youth Exchange going online. And so it's a short article here, and I'll just read it, and it has some interesting thoughts in it.
Good.
And this is written by a fellow from India, and it says, after their son and daughter took part in Rotary Youth Exchange programs, Ashok and Sandara Bhandari joined the Rotary Club of Pine Singhad Road, India, and having seen firsthand the profound experience the program can have on young people's lives, became a member of the District 3130 Youth Exchange team. So last year, when the COVID-19 pandemic forced the cancellation of planned exchanges, which we all experienced, he wasn't willing to let that life-changing experience for students in his district slip away. Instead, he saw an opportunity. He decided to take the program virtual. Number one, how did you go into setting up a virtual Rotary Youth Exchange program in your district? And Rashmi Kulkarni, governor of District 3130, which is in India, green-lighted the proposal to proceed with the program online. We promoted the idea to clubs and individual Rotarians through WhatsApp and emails to 400 districts. I requested and received information from the Rotary Youth Exchange office about guidelines for a virtual program. With schools closed and people working from home due to the pandemic, there was increased interest. The program filled a need, cost less, and required less documentation. We designed a simple virtual youth exchange application form and handled the application process, fees, and club approvals online. The next question is, how did the virtual exchanges work? We decided that the exchange should last 4 months, from October to January, like a short-term Rotary Exchange program. We had Zoom meetings between leaders to address questions about time zones. The time differences were between 9 and 11 hours, and language difficulties. We formed a detailed action plan for inbound student activities, which included family communication time, online language and hobby classes, presentations to each host club, and attendance to host club meetings and district events such as RILA. We planned virtual visits to local attractions, quiz competitions, cooking and yoga classes, and other ideas that were proposed and incorporated by participating families. Rotex alumni associations played an important role during the first week, and Rotex are Rotary Youth Exchange alumni people.
Okay.
And after that, everything was on auto mode. We conducted surveys from outbound and inbound students, and the feedback was positive. A student from Venezuela said she learned a lot about the culture, food, geography, and history of India, and that she was surprised to discover how little she had known about India before the exchange. A student from India enjoyed learning about Christmas from the virtual host family in Brazil and sharing Diwali customs with them. The next question is, how did going virtual affect your team of organizers? The team structure was the same as for in-person exchanges. Outbound and inbound youth protection, promotion, and orientation officers for a 20-member district team. A Rotary Youth Exchange Club leader from each club was also appointed. Club arranged separate Zoom meetings for their presentations. And lastly, what benefits of virtual program did you find? And with a virtual exchange, you can increase the level of participation. We had 46 participants from my district, along with 28 from Brazil, 17 from Venezuela, and 1 from the United States. Conducting a virtual exchange also enabled us to include economically disadvantaged and rural students who otherwise would not be able to go on an in-person exchange. It is affordable, offers wider accessibility, and can connect a greater variety of students to the international community. This will increase participation and the number of exchanges, which will definitely boost world peace. So it's kind of a really interesting program. It opens it up to many more people, and who knows how long it's going to be before we can start our exchange program.
Well, it certainly cut down the red tape as far as passports and having to go through all those kind of processes and travel processes.
I think it also ticks another box for many young people is to go on a long-term exchange. You basically take a year out of your life, whether, and in most cases that's university, so you're a year back. You can probably continue on doing with whatever you're doing at home, but still participate in an exchange program. And certainly for my benefit, the exchange programs, learning about new countries and cultures and getting to know people in those cultures, definitely shrinks the world.
Yeah, they would, like, we're used to the program being District 5550, us, and another 20 maybe kind of districts, and we get 1 or 2 people from each of those. Now they probably doubled their number of participants, I'm guessing, just by the numbers they talked there.
Yeah, I don't know what they had before.
Before, right, yeah.
But it certainly opens up a lot more opportunities.
And the cost.
The cost is everybody's affordable. You have to have access to the internet and whatnot, and probably not much more.
Oh no, I mean, you don't have a little more organizing, I would think, in terms of the actual year once you got into it, in things to do and participate in and that sort of stuff. I mean, it was pretty easy in the past. In our district, they all came to Neepawa here for their orientation in September, and with the Inner Wheel Club, who actually hosts them, and ourselves, it just kind of runs from year to year to year. It didn't take a lot more organizing, but those things can't happen, so clubs and families would have to do, more organizing in terms of the activities.
And certainly they would in the start of it, for sure, but it's a lot like the orientation. Nobody that was at the orientation last year is here next year, so it doesn't have to be different. And once you get into the mode of what works well for online people and what you want to teach them, it also would depend on the individuals involved. Certainly the exchange students would have to put some effort into it to make sure that, they are on the calls, they do learn about the other country and whatnot, but that's no different than the in-person exchanges that we've had in the past.
I wonder if our district people read this article.
I don't know. It would be very interesting to talk to the district exchange team.
You know them quite well, and I do too. You maybe can follow up.
Might be an interesting thought.
Because Neepawa has been out of it for a couple of years in terms of sending somebody somewhere. I know there was another comment I heard, well, kids, they spent way too much time on Zoom and lessons by remote and so on. They're not going to want to do that. But obviously, quite a number did.
And you're learning something constructive.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, that's good. Maybe I'll just finish up with a couple of things here, Murray. I noticed on the magazine that I have on the back page, they talk about Rotary action groups, which are also something than e-clubs and so on. Rotary Action Group helps clubs and districts plan and carry out community development and humanitarian service projects in their areas of expertise. The groups are organized by Rotarians, Rotaractors, Rotary Peace Fellows, and with skills and interest in a particular field. Membership is open to anyone who wants to share their expertise to make a positive impact. And an action group members have the opportunity to engage in meaningful service activities outside of their clubs, districts, or countries. Clubs can draw on these groups to enhance projects, engage members, and attract new ones, and so on. So that's another way. It's not a club, but it's an action group that people of like-minded service can get together and share ideas and so on. And they list about 20 here. 6 of the ones here deal with our own focus groups that I know we have: community economic development, environmental sustainability, literacy, peace, reproductive, maternal and child health, and water, sanitation, hygiene as well. But there's some interesting ones here that are very narrowly focused. Blindness prevention. There's a Rotary Action Group for that. They're called RAGS, Rotary Action Group. Not sure the mnemonic is the best, but blood donation. Well, there's an interesting one. We've lost the blood donation clinic here in Neepawa for a number of years.
Yes.
And do miss it. I do anyway. And here's really a clubfoot. Now, you know, we know that it in fact is a disease or a condition that is still prevalent in the world, but don't know much about it at all.
No.
So there's an action group, you know, in regards to that. Diabetes, disaster assistant, endangered species, AIDS prevention, food plant solutions, health education with hearing, hepatitis, malaria, multiple sclerosis, so a number of ailments are listed here. Polio survivors. We did a Rotary Reads with Christine Waddell about a month ago now, I guess, on polio survivors. It was in an issue that, an older issue that I found, and Chris did that. She was really intrigued and came away, you know, really glad that she did do the read and so on. She was quite impressed with what happened. Chris is a member of the Banner and Press family, and they're a corporate member to our club. Slavery prevention. There's a RAG for that. So there's certainly, and notice that, I particularly noticed that there's not one for politics, and there's not one for religion. And that's on purpose, as I would see, because Rotary is very adamant about keeping politics out of our organization and keeping religion out of our organization in terms of a specific religion. We encourage everybody to participate in their own faith, whatever it is,
Yep.
and their own politics for that matter, whatever it is, but don't bring it to the meeting.
Yep. And I think that's an important thing, and that's one of the things that makes the clubs so successful.
Exactly. So usually end the program with the 4-way test and the song that the Saskatoon Club did for the competition. You're looking at me. You've heard it, and you'll have to check one out so that you hear it. But that last night at online, the district organized a webinar on the 4-way test, and the first webinar, they're doing 4 of them on the 4 items of it. Is it the truth? And they had one part of the program was they had a professor of journalism from Ryerson, I think it was, talk about ethics in journalism. Is it the truth, and so on. And the other one talked about the social media aspect. Is it the truth? Is it beneficial for all? Does it promote goodwill and fellowship? And is it fair to all concerned? Yeah. So bring on the song, and thank you very much, Murray, for sharing the program with me today.
It's been great to be here, Dave.
Great.
Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build good? Will it better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?